Welcome to Fright Fix. How you doing, Sick?
I'm good, Celia. It feels like it's been like 3 months since we
It's
recorded
been
anything.
it's been quite a while. It has been a fair few weeks. I feel a bit rusty.
Yeah, we've been like kicking this film down the road like a lot. We keep
Yeah.
delaying it and delaying
When
it.
when did you watch this?
I watched it a few weeks ago, so I'm heavily relying on my notes and my memory on this one. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think the same. I think I saw this 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, quite a long time ago. And my memory's like a fish. But luckily, I feel like the film we're going to review has quite a simple plot. So it will be easy to remember.
Yes. Yes. So we watched The Circle, which is a horror movie on Netflix at the moment in the UK. And it's yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's the 2015 version, not the more recent version, because there's a different film called The Circle. And
with Tom Hanks.
Yeah. And then this is Circle, which is the 2015 one, which is quite confusing because they're both kind of in the same like genre.
Oh, did I say The Circle? Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. This is called Circle, just Circle on its own. Yeah. So the basic premise is 50 people wake up in this room, in this kind of black room. And there's this kind of thing in the middle of the room. And basically, if any of these 50 people kind of leave the spot that they're standing off, like leave the spot that they're standing on, or if they touch anyone else in the room, then they basically get zapped and disappear into the darkness.
Yeah, die.
Yeah, but the twist here is the 50 people don't know each other, or at least at first it seems. And every 2 minutes, somebody has to die. But the thing is, it's not just any random death. Basically, the remaining people in the room have to basically elect someone to die, and so it's the group decision. They choose who dies. So they go through this journey where they like try to find connections or patterns and between the people. Why are they here? Why are they being chosen to die? And then it kind of descends into chaos where suddenly people want to decide to kill other people based on their age or the color of their skin or their religion or who's kind of immoral and various other reasons. And that's the story in a nutshell, right?
That's a really good explanation because that is exactly what the film's about.
Okay.
What
so
did you
think?
Oh, okay.
I'm getting to you before you get to me.
No. So I had no idea what this film was about before I started it. But you quickly figure out, what the dilemmas are going to be. They have to start choosing people pretty early on. They figure out what's happening. And I feel like this is a really interesting idea to be discussed. It's one of those things that, like, if you were having a dinner party or something and you're like, oh, what if we were all in a room and we had to choose who to die? Like, how would we choose it? And then you'd get into a debate about who you would choose. That's essentially what happens here. It's like, how do you vote on someone's worthiness to live based on what they look like? Because you don't have enough time to delve into who they are. You just have to kind of do it either on instinct or on very surface level conversations that you have with the people around you.
Or your own prejudices, yeah.
Or your own prejudices, which they're very happy to talk about in Circle. And I think it's an interesting concept that makes you think quite a lot about what you would have chosen or what your biases are. There's this whole kind of subplot within this where half of the people think that those who should survive are a pregnant woman and a child, and the other half are like, no, why should they live above us? Like, there's those kind of questions of the morality of your choices that you make. There's people who choose themselves, like essentially commit suicide for the other people. There are people who decide that no one's leaving, so we're just gonna take matters into our own hands and step out of the circle and choose ourselves. Like, there's lots of different interesting human ways of trying to figure out what's going on. I do remember from quite early on looking at how long was left of the film and being like, is this all that this film is? Like, it's a really interesting subject, but is it a full feature-length film worth of,
well, as if can they stretch this concept to like 90 minutes or whatever, or was it 2 hours and 90 minutes? I forget.
I think it was around 90 minutes. It wasn't a long film.
No.
And I was surprised that actually I was pretty much gripped throughout, but from the beginning I was like, whoa, you have to really like this concept, otherwise you're going to hate this film because there's nothing else. Like, this is it. So, I think what's good about films like this is it really makes you you have to think inwardly about the way that you feel, and you're basically spending the whole time being like, would I have made that decision or would I not have? With other films, you kind of get lost in the plot and you get lost in the character development, and you might not really be thinking about how you would react. But in this, you've got no choice other than like the way that you might feel. So I think that's quite interesting. But that's like my initial thoughts. What did you think?
It's a bit of an odd one, because when I watched this film and everything just felt very familiar to me, and it wasn't until the very end of the movie when it had finished I was like, oh, I've seen this before actually. And it took me a while to twig, because just all the beats felt very familiar, and I was thinking, is this just a very predictable movie? And it's only at the end when I realized, no, I've seen this already.
Yeah.
But I agree with everything you've just said. Like, yeah, it's very strange, because if I'd watched this movie like about 3 years ago, which I probably did, I think my views on which characters I kind of lean towards would have been different compared to now.
Yeah.
And I think that's more about just living in a post kind of COVID world, and just I think just my views on people have changed, and I think over time I've learned to become a bit more understanding of other people's views, and I don't know, having a bit more awareness of privilege, and because I think these things I just kind of didn't really pay too much attention to before, and so now those characters, like, you know, the businessman type, and the guy who wears the old man in the sweater vest, and you know, there's a couple of them that are kind of these kind of very right-wing type characters, and just I don't know, they just seem very, I don't know, almost caricaturish. And so like those kind of characters, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of nuance to them. They're just kind of like, they are the bad guys in this movie, essentially, or made out to be, or either the filmmakers or the writers have their own agenda, which is fine. I mean, you know, whatever, you know, I'm not judging or anything. But I think one of my problems with this movie is, sorry, I'm just jumping straight into the thing I didn't like about it is, there's like 50 characters, and it was just, I mean, right now I could probably only tell you I only remember a few of them, because there's like, they're all kind of like a stereotype of some sort, like the religious lady, the military guy, the business guy, the old man, the nerd, the pregnant lady, you know, and all that stuff. But there's a part of me that kind of wishes almost that like a lot of the characters just kind of blurred into one, and right now, like, I couldn't even tell you half the characters that are in this movie, and only a couple really made an impact on me, like the child. There was this moment where this guy was kind of antagonizing a lady about having a boob job or something. So I remember her. I remember the two black people that were having an affair. The Spanish guy that couldn't speak English, and so there's only a couple of people that I could actually remember now. So what I probably would have done differently with this film is maybe reduce the number of people that were in the circle, and alongside that, it seems like, you know, when each round goes and they're deciding a new strategy on how to eliminate people, it seems it's kind of at a breakneck pace. Like, you know, it happens very quickly. It goes at like 100 miles an hour, this film. You know, someone dies, and the next they're like, okay, let's kill all the old people. Then they die. Then, you know, oh, let's kill all the black people. Let's kill all the rich people. You know, you know, a part of me wishes that there were fewer people, and then they just focused in on fewer reasons to kill
and like
people,
more developed characters.
So the bit where there's this bit in the movie where this one black guy is trying to band all the black people together, like, you know, like a strength in numbers type thing. And I felt like something like that could have, if they paid a bit more attention to it, they could have made, I just feel like they could have put a bit more meat on it, and, you know, put a bit more tension in it. But because everything just happened so quick, you kind of, all those kind of themes are diluted a little bit. Like everything's visited briefly, but not really like nothing's delved into in any significant meaty kind of way, really.
It's like they're trying to do too much in quite a short space of time, and then like exactly like you say, I think your version answers a lot of my annoyances with this film, which I picked up on as well, which was about the stereotyping people and making them not seem like fully rounded people. Like there was no point where I was like, I really feel for this character because I get them, or I see they're complicated. And one of the reasons why I noticed that was like, even when you're looking at the cast, it's really funny because they don't have names. They just have like the young girl, the college guy, the tattooed man, the oldest man, the African-American man, the rich man. There's a few people who have names who obviously say their name in the thing.
Yeah.
But I think you're totally right that it doesn't feel like it delves deep enough into what this film's trying to do, which is to say that, do we ever have a right to say who deserves to live and die? Is there ever a time where you could look at someone and after 2 minutes with them say that, you're better than them, kind of thing? And I do feel like some of the stereotypes or some of the things that people were saying were like offensive for no reason, or it was offensive and not necessarily delving into why. Like there was one scene where there was a gay woman. Do you remember? And she was like,
oh, yeah.
She didn't want to say she was gay because she didn't want people to, choose her.
Sure.
And then they kind of interrogated her and she said that she was married to a woman and that she was proud of who she was and stuff. And like she was basically berated by these other characters who clearly didn't agree with her, but there was no one sticking up for her. Like there was no moral to the story of like, don't judge somebody by who they are. In that situation, it was just like, I don't know, it just felt weird that they weren't using this as an opportunity to say, even though she's gay, it doesn't make a difference as to whether you get to choose if she lives or dies. Just like you can't choose if somebody supports Trump. I mean, this was before Trump, but like, or in the midst of it, who was right wing, you can't say that they deserve to live or die. And it just felt like it was scratching the surface on a really interesting topic. And like the idea is really interesting, but that it never got to a point where I started thinking like, oh, that's really clever. It's just like, yeah, obviously the military guy is going to say that. And obviously the rich man's going to look out for himself. Like there was no nuance to their characters that made them human.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. That, I mean, just listening to you right now, this movie more so reminds me of the chaos and vacuousness of, I suppose, American politics more than anything, like that right wing, left wing kind of politics. How there's loads of politicians, there's loads of them, and they all seem to have some kind of agenda or some kind of platform that they're running on or whatever, but everything just feels very lip service or very kind of, nothing ever really gets to the core of the matter, and it's all very kind of, everyone has an opinion about something, but then depending on which agenda they have, they will morph their own opinions to whatever. And it's just that kind of cacophony of nonsense opinions and nonsense viewpoints and perspectives, and that's just kind of what this whole thing felt like. I don't know if it was intentional or but everyone's opinion seemed to change depending on which character was in favor of in the group, and then it just took one person to say something really, something. I don't know. It was like any excuse to kill someone, like, oh, you're a lesbian, oh, you're black. It's just. But on any normal day, I bet most of the people in that room would be totally okay with. They were just looking for ways to survive, and they were just making really lame reasons to kill each other off, and
pigeonholing everybody to being like good, bad. Do I agree? Do I not? And I think, one of the things about this film that from the beginning, I was like, well, okay, only one person can survive. I don't know how they figured that out, but pretty much straight away they were like, oh, it's going to get down to the last person.
Yeah.
It made me not care as much about the characters because I knew that most of them were going to die.
Because
I was like,
as well, yeah.
It's like, you can clearly see who the last people are going to be. Like maybe there was like 4 or 5 people that were like clearly the main characters, the pregnant woman, the child, it ends up being that man who kind of manipulates everything, and some of the louder characters. I was like, well, there's so many people dying that I'm not investing in any one person because like I know that they're not going to be here for much longer, and if one person's going to survive, like why worry about it?
Yeah, totally. It's because they all just blur into one after all, and you're right, because you want to have that element of, okay, they could survive, could they die, that kind of, it could go either way, but here it just felt like there's one trajectory, everyone is going to die, it's just which order are they going to die in. And I think what I would have preferred in the story is like, if it would have been nice if they could find some kind of pattern or some kind of reason why this was happening. Like if I don't know, a few of them were smart enough and they saw the pattern, that kind of orb that's in the middle that's zapping everyone.
Yeah.
Like if they found another pattern, oh wait, at the beginning of the film they realize how one of them figures out that it's their hands, how they're voting against each other.
Which, by the way, how did they figure that out? Did you not think that at the beginning of this film they seemed to figure things out pretty quickly? It was like the plot didn't have any time for them to like think about it. They were just like, oh my god, we're all going to die, don't get off your mark, it's a voting system and you do it this way. And it's like 10 minutes in, I would be screaming for my life and running off that tiny thing, but nobody moves, everybody just does what everybody else says.
I think a few of them died, and then
a few, but in general they're like, okay, I'm just going to stand here then and listen to these random people that are telling me what to do.
yeah So I think so that was kind of like the only real point when they were kind of figuring the system out or figuring the alien out or whatever. And a part of me wishes maybe they could have kind of cracked the system a little bit, or figured, a few of the tenacious ones could have figured it out. And to be honest, I would have been totally okay with if they all just ended up dying at the end. I would have been okay with that.
But it gives you hope. Like, it gives you hope that people might survive, and then you're more invested in them because you're like, oh, there might be a way out.
Exactly. Yeah. So at least they died trying. And and talking about aliens, I'm not really I'm not really sure how I felt about the ending, to be honest. Like, I'm
sure how I felt about the ending. It was unnecessary. Why do that bit? Sorry, I just completely cut you off, but it really annoyed me. I was like, there was no reason why we ever had to know that he survived. It would have been so much cooler if it just stopped. Like, he ends up winning, and then we have no idea what happens to him. We don't even know if he's on planet Earth anymore. But he just gets pooped out of the spaceship and just watches with other people from the ground. The spaceship's like pooing other people out or whatever they're doing. And it's like, it lost all sense of like metaphor or intrigue that the film had been building about what was actually happening. No one knows. And then it just brought it smack down to reality where we didn't need this film to go.
Yeah, I think it was massively unnecessary. I think the perfect bit where they could have just cut off was, when they revealed that there was the baby was another person who was surviving. Yeah. That's why he didn't go. And then it kind of cuts to black and you just hear the zap sound. Like, I think it could have just ended there and it would have been totally fine. That whole bit at the end where they show the alien and they're in the outside world, that bit could have just been like a DVD extra or something,
Yeah, I feel like my first reaction was, oh, they did both versions where they had a cliffhanger and then they didn't, and then somebody in the writers' room or some focus
group,
some focus group was like, we need to know the ending, and so they added this later. And it just brought me out of any kind of, because I enjoyed the ending of, the pregnant woman being zapped, and then the twist that her unborn her still living baby is one of the contestants. I did not expect that coming. So like you then have to start reconfiguring, like, okay, now what's he going to do? What's going to happen? But yeah, it just felt unnecessary that we found out.
Yeah. I think that kind of cliffhanger ending would have worked better if the preceding film, if all the kind of hypotheticals and discussions had throughout the film were a bit more juicier, and less kind of like 100 miles an hour, just a bit slower, and where people actually get to have some kind of tension or discussion about something really significant. So you can't have like an amazing ending if the first two acts are lame. Like, I'm not saying the first acts were lame, but they were just a bit kind of light. Maybe I feel like the film maybe could have done with a couple more drafts, or maybe get someone a bit more experienced in.
I agree. And I think especially when you have such a light plot where only one thing happens, you have room to really develop the characters. And I think you're completely right. I hadn't really thought about it before, but have less people, have more dialogue, and have more robust conversations about themselves and morality, and having those debates without it being like stereotypes of different people. It feels like it would have worked really well maybe as a book where you see things from different people's perspectives, and you get to really understand them a bit more, and then they end up dying, and you actually are upset about it.
Yeah.
And it does make me think a little bit about Squid Games and things like
I
that.
was thinking that too. Yeah.
It's like you have Squid Games, which it does develop the characters. They're doing essentially the same thing, which is a game show to the death, and this can be classed as quite similar to that. But in Squid Game, you get to know the characters so well, and you don't know who's going to die or if it all is lost, because there's so many things that are happening in it. And I'm not saying this has to be as complicated as that or as like deep as that, but it feels like a very like rare concept to create for a film where not much happens, but also you have to answer all these questions. And it's like, I'm not sure it did it. I'm not sure it did it in a deep way.
Yeah. No, totally. I think you summed it up quite well. Yeah, I totally forgot about Squid Game. But yeah, it does definitely remind you a lot of Squid Game. And yeah, you're right, with Squid Game, you kind of, obviously you know, you're aware that there's loads of other characters, and you kind of, you're familiar with them and everything, but yeah, you only really ever focus in on a handful of them. And I mean, there were some cool bits. I mean, the bit where the child kind of sacrifices herself, where she's tricked into it, that bit kind of got me. And I think the bit where there's like a Latino mother who is willing to sacrifice herself because she kind of talks about how her son died the previous year or something, so she kind of feels like maybe she has nothing to live for, and that kind of like was quite touching and whatnot.
That's a really good one. Like, I feel like that was a really good story that they developed enough for it to be heartbreaking, and you're like, no, I don't
it was only 60 seconds or something,
and it was 60 seconds. But then you have people, I think one of the ones that I got really annoyed at was the rich guy. I think he was the business dude with like the suspenders or whatever.
Yeah.
I felt like he was such a caricature of a rich guy.
I'm surprised they didn't get rid of him earlier. Like, the group could have just got rid of him. Yeah,
but I guess he's a white middle-aged man. He's got more privilege than everybody else. But,
but he's just annoying.
He was just really annoying, and I just feel like he was such a high-level character. He was like an NPC that had been given a few lines, and you're like, this person doesn't bring anything. It doesn't make me think.
Pretty much all of them there. That's the thing.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head here, where they were all just NPCs. And I mean, who was the player character? Which one of those people represented us? Because the moment you kind of get attached to someone, they kind of just die. Everyone.
Yeah, and actually, the one character that I guess we were supposed to be focusing on was the guy who ends up winning, and because he kind of tricks everybody into dying pretty much and wins. It would have been so cool if he was an interesting character, but he wasn't at all. He was a generic young man of no importance, and maybe it helped him kind of not be seen by everybody else. He could blend in, kind of thing. But I don't know, I just didn't really care about him. And so I didn't care if he won or not. I wanted, like, it would have been really interesting if somebody who seemed like a very weak character ended up winning, like an old person or something, who was like, haha, fooled you all. Or a young person who everybody just dismissed as like not understanding the game.
Yeah.
And like, oh, we'll leave it till later. And then they end up being the person who, because then it teaches you, like, don't judge a book by its cover. But his cover was just bland man. I'm not judging anything. I just don't care about you.
No, I agree with you, because the thing with the guy who ended up winning, or surviving rather, I, for the life of you, could not even, I couldn't even remember anything he'd done like about 10 minutes prior to the end. Like, I can't remember his contribution to the story, or he just kind of, that's the thing. That's the problem I had with most of these characters. I just don't, unless they said something really provocative or looked a certain way, like they all just blended and blurred into one character, and I think it's really hard, as you said before, it's just really hard to get emotionally connected or invested with any of them if they all just look like they made out of the same cookie cutter. Or
you know what, the one thing I would say about this film is I'm so glad they never revealed the aliens or ever had them speak, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, the audience will want to know, the audience will want to hear something from them. But the fact that we have no idea who these creatures are or whatever they are, like they don't speak. It's literally just this game.
Yeah.
Because I was really worried that was going to happen throughout. I was like, oh no, one of them's going to reveal themselves to actually be one of the aliens, or like a voice is going to come over the intercom and be like, you need to decide, blah blah blah. I'm just so glad that they just didn't do any of that.
Yeah. There's but then they had that reveal at the very end with all the spaceships.
Let's just pretend that didn't happen. But like the actual aliens.
You know the bit right at the very end when the guy's just on his own, left in the room before we figure out the baby thing. What I thought they were going to do was, it turns out that everybody that died hadn't actually died. They were just like somehow removed from the process, and that the guy who was the true kind of, traitor amongst them, the one who ended up winning, he would just remain in that room forever. Like he would just, I thought that was going to be his punishment. But then I thought, there were some other like bad characters in there, like the business people
that you didn't want to survive.
Yeah,
like,
so why would they survive? Yeah. So,
but I agree, because did you think that because you never actually see them die, like they get shot and then they get wheeled away, and I was like, that's, unless you see someone like physically dying on screen, I never believe that they're dead, because they usually pop back up at some
there were
other
loads of
like,
off-death screens in here.
Yeah, there were off-death screens.
Off-screen off-death screens. Off-screen deaths.
Yeah. Or like, they just get shot and then pulled away, and I was like, that's suspicious.
Yeah. And they just get kind of zapped.
Better. Yeah.
And they just get zapped. I thought maybe they were just getting tased or something, like it kind of knocks them out briefly or something.
I don't know what the, like, I feel like your ending is better because it makes you think more about, putting somebody else's life in your hands. And should you be the person who, chooses yourself? Are you being selfish by wanting to survive? And like, have you actually lost by, manipulating everybody else?
Yeah, it's I mean, the deaths that the characters are suffering seemed pretty painless, to be honest. Like it seemed like they were zapped and killed instantaneously almost. So I can think of worse ways to go.
I mean, I have to be honest, about 10 minutes in, I was like, I'd just step off. I can't be bothered like to deal with all of these people. I would rather just not deal with it. I'm not going to survive. If I've already been abducted into like an alien ship, it's fine. Take me. It's done. I'm not going to. Yeah, my life's not going to be good after this. But I do remember, like, right at the beginning of this film, being so confused that people weren't more afraid, because they skip past all of what would happen, which is like, at least half of the people, if not more, would have run off. Like, you wake up in a random place, you don't just stand there, you run and then you die. But only a few people did that at the beginning.
Yeah, and then that would have been a great way to like filter down the number of people left for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and it would only be the ones that are able to collect themselves, who are like, wait, the people who are running are the ones that are dying, so don't move. Whereas in this, it was like they wake up from a drug-induced thing and like a few people die, and then they're all like, we must stay still and we must vote. We're using our hands and blah, blah, blah. It's like, how did you figure all this out? Why are you not panicking?
Yeah. Or unless when the lead character, or when that first character wakes up and they already see bodies on the floor.
But why would you think that I can't move? That's why they're dead.
No. But then there's that one guy across the way where he's like telling her, don't move. Staring at his foot, like. If there was already something like that, I don't know. Yeah.
I still would have run.
Yeah, and I would have pointed and laughed.
Yeah. It's a really cool concept idea, I think. And it must have been quite hard to get this produced, I feel like. It's quite a hard sell to be like, it's going to be a whole film about one room and it's one thing that happens throughout. And I feel like if this was done by, I mean, I don't know who produced this, but if this was like an A24 film or like an independent film, it could have been really cool, because they would have maybe spent a bit more time developing it, and I don't know, just having a bit more of the nuance in it that would make you think a little bit more about what it means to be in the circle.